In order to make your own case management system, the one thing you need to do is to create a Google account. Once you have your Google account created, or if you've already have a Google account, go to the right hand side here with this, I guess it's a checker box icon. Click on it, you'll see a drop down menu come, and you want to click on Google Drive. Click on Google Drive. In Google Drive, actually I'm already in Google Drive, but I wanted to show you how to get there in case you don't know. Since we're in Google Drive, we just want to create one folder for now to start. We're going to call this HMIS. I'm going to go through an HMIS system, but right now we're mainly interested in the case management part of the HMIS system. But I'll first just create the whole folder as HMIS. We're going to go into the folder, and as we can see, there's nothing there. The folder is embedded in my drive. I just want to think ahead, talk about something that we're not going to quite come up against yet, but it's good to have it in now. We're going to create another folder. This folder is going to be called Templates and Lists. When we're done, what's going to be inside this folder is just a couple of one document and one spreadsheet. The spreadsheet will have lists which will help us automatically populate lists within our forms. The document will be a template to be able to reproduce separate case plan sheets for each individual client. Now that we're in the folder, what we want to do is create the first form called Intake Assessment. Now to create a form, what you do is do just like you do when you're creating a folder. It's new, so we click in new. You see it gives us the options here. If you've never made a form before, you can see that the options are not immediate. You have to go under the More tab, click on Google Forms. Right now it's purple, and it automatically creates a Google form for you. It's going to say take a tour. We're going to say no thanks. And in this form, we can title it two ways. We can just go up here. I'm just going to get rid of the title there. We're going to call this the assessment. Now it's saved as assessment. As you can see, it updated it down here. We're going to just start building an assessment form. Now, this is not going to be a real assessment form that I would actually use in the work field. I may create one later, but for now, we just want to go through so we can learn the technology. So I'm going to make this assessment form very short. Our first thing here, well, of course, we can go a form description. We can call it assessment form for new clients. This very first field right here, it gives us one field, and it just tells us it's an untitled question. Instead of untitled question, we're just going to call client name. Right now, the default is a multiple choice. We don't want that. We want to write in the person's name. So we're going to make this a short answer, and then we're going to give it a on the bottom right hand with these three dots, we're going to give it a description and a data validation. Description just helps the person who's filling out the form type in format, and we want them to put their last name, a comma, and first name, and then a space, middle initial. When somebody's doing an assessment, or they might not be thinking about how to fill in the form, they might by accident put the first name first and then the last name second, and that's going to create inconsistent results. One thing we can do to stop that is to go down here and click bottom right hand corner under data validation. It gives us several options here. It wants us to know what kind of data validation we're looking for. We want it to be text, because a comma is just text, and we want it to contain, and then we want it to be only just one comma, and that's it. What this does is it ensures that the person is going to type in a comma, and the thinking behind this is that somebody's not going to type in the first name and last name and put a comma in between. The only time we use a comma is if we're really going to type in the last name first and then comma and first name. Okay, so we're going to go down to the bottom right hand corner and make it required. And because this is going to be a very short form, I'm only going to have about 5 or so categories. We've just finished our first category, client name. The next category we can obtain by simply clicking this plus sign. And we immediately get another category. As you can see, it automatically gives us a multiple choice, but we're not going to have a multiple choice for this. What I'm going to call this is, we're just going to call it date of birth. Date of birth. We're going to go from multiple choice to a date. Now I can put a date and then a time field later, but right now I'm just going to do a date. Later on, if we find we do need a time for something that would include a date, you can go to the bottom right hand corner again, click again, and you can click on include time, and then it'll put a time right here next to the date. So that kind of just helps conserve space. We're going to make this required. The next thing we're going to do is make down a drop-down list. And instead of multiple choice, we want it to be a drop-down list. We're going to title this Veteran Status. It's important to know whether they're a veteran or not if we're serving clients, if we're serving homeless clients, because often we want to know if they found the benefits available to them, and if they're eligible for these benefits. Most veterans are. It's important to know whether they've contacted the agency that will help them obtain these benefits. So veteran status is very important. Now I don't really want to get behind too much the theory of which questions to ask. Right now we just want to learn the technology. What we're going to do is we're going to type in veteran, not a veteran. Third option is actively serving. So technically, if you're serving somebody who, like say they're in the National Guard, they're not technically a veteran. They're a military personnel. So anyways, let's go to the next one. And we are going to type in IDs. One of the things that case management does a lot of is help people with IDs, especially if they're indigent. We're going to make this a checkbox. Okay, and this checkbox is going to be, we're going to call this IDs possessed. We want to know what IDs they possessed when they come in for services. And we're just going to say no ID for the first one. Add another option. I'm going to make this shorter than I normally would, of course, just to save time. Just going to make a few options. We're going to say this is the state of Texas, so we're going to say Texas driver's license or ID, and we're going to say out of state driver's license or ID, and we're going to go Bayard ID. And it's sometimes good to know if they have a birth certificate or not. Some services require it. If you're going to refer somebody, sometimes they want a birth certificate as proof of their identity, even if they do have a Texas driver's license. But okay, and we're just going to add this other option. We're going to call that, actually, we're going to get rid of that option. We get rid of it by going to this right-hand X. And I'm just going to add other. If they have any other, that's fine. Actually, why don't I just give them a social security number? Or a social security card. We're going to make this required, and we're going to go on to the next thing. We're also going to create another checkbox, and we're going to call this medical issues. issues. And this is going to be way shorter than I would normally make it, but we're just going to put in just a few. This is just mainly to test that it works. Okay, we're going to say no known issues first, and we'll just, for brevity's sake, we'll just say hearts, lungs, very common one, and cancer, tuberculosis is very important, HIV/AIDS, missing limb, and then we're going to say psychiatric. Actually, we're going to make an other, get rid of that option and say other. Okay, we're going to make this required. We're going to create a paragraph entry on our next input. We're going to make this a paragraph. We want to just say comments on medical issues. And that's, say, if somebody has a missing limb, well, down here you'd say what kind of missing limb do they have? Do they have both arms, one leg, right, left, things like that. We're going to make this required, but also we want to, because we make it required, what happens if they have no medical issues? Then what we do is just put in a description that says, if no medical issues, type none. Now we're going to put the date. We're just going to make this date. This is the date of the assessment. Click on this, get it from the multiple choice default back to what we want, which is the date. And of course, this is one instance where you can put the time. And okay, maybe I will put time in here, date and time of the assessment. There it is. And as you can see, it has month, day, year, and then underneath is the time. Okay, I'm going to make this required. I'm going to make another entry, and I'm going to call this one staff member. This will indicate who's filling out the form, and we are going to make that to a drop-down list. It's right here, drop-down. We're not going to populate it. We're going to do something else to allow an automatic population of who staff members are, rather than just do it in the form. And we'll show you how to do that in just a little bit here. Okay, we're going to make it required. We go into this more, it's three little dots lined up, click on it, go to the bottom, and it says add-ons. Click on the add-ons, and the add-on we're going to look for is called Form Ranger. And Form Ranger is an add-on that will help us automatically populate the lists. Okay, here's Form Ranger. And it says it's free, so we're going to click on it. And this entire site will be free because we'll only be using free tools. We're going to allow it to have access to our form. Okay, and Form Ranger gives a little information. We say we got it. What Form Ranger does is automatically picks up anything that could be a list. Client name, that's not a list. That's what we have as a short type-in answer. So that's client name is not going to appear on Form Ranger. What you see on Form Ranger is veteran status, IDs possessed, medical issues, and down here you can't see it, but it's down there. You click on it, and staff member, that's actually what we want. And these correspond to any list that we've created in the form. Veteran status is a drop-down list. IDs possessed is a check list. Medical issues, the same thing, a checklist. See, medical issues are there. And comment on medical issues will not be there because there's no list. It's a typed-in answer. Date won't be there. It's typed in, or maybe selected some some of your browsers may allow you to select the date. Other browsers will just have to type them in. But either way, date is not going to be in Form Ranger. Staff member is, because we made it into a drop-down list. Okay, so we've got staff member selected here, and you can't see it here. On some browsers you can, some browsers you can't, but there's a little box next to this populate from values list, and it's just to the left. If I hover over it, you'll see that box pop up, and I'm just going to click on it, populate from values list, and I want to hit new values list, but I'm actually not going to do that yet. What I'm going to do is create a list outside of this form that will populate it. And here I'll show you what I mean. Going up here to my Google Drive. Now remember we made a folder earlier that said templates and lists? Well, this is where this comes in handy, right here. I'm going to click inside this folder, and I'm going to go into new, select new, and I want a new Google Sheet. It's going to automatically make an untitled Google Sheet, and I'm just going to call this lists. Okay, now this is just like a spreadsheet. It's online, and I'm just going to make things a little bit bigger here, and I'm just going to call this staff members. I'll also maybe create some more. Later on, we'll have a services list that we will use to populate another form. We won't go into that now. I'm just going to kind of format it here real quick. I'm going to select this whole row and make it bold, and I might put an underline on there. So I'm going to go into format, because underline isn't immediately apparent. I have to go in here and check it. Okay, and the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to view, and I'm going to click freeze. And what this does is, if you have a long list, it will make that row at the top freeze no matter how you scroll down. If we didn't freeze it, what would happen is staff members would, the name of this column would disappear whenever we scroll down. So we freeze it. Google automatically recognizes that the very first thing you enter into a column is going to be that column's name. So let me delete this, and we're going to put in some real data. At the top we'll put new staff member, just in case we haven't updated this list and a brand new staff member enters it. The next one we're just going to go by, I say, the colors of the rainbow. Blue staff, green staff. I'm trying not to use people's real names. Brown staff, and we'll put red staff, and that should be good. Let's just put in 4 staff members, and services will populate at another time. But now that we have this done, I'm actually just going to close out of it, and I'm going to go back into my folder, and we see there's our lists, and it's inside the folder called templates and lists. Now what we want to do is we want to go back to our form, which is right here on this tab. It's going to ask us populate values from list here under staff member, and I've already checked it. Now I want to select new values list, and it's going to take us into our folder, and it's going to allow us to pick any spreadsheet or form that we want to use to populate our list. We've already made this list here. We just made it, and I'm going to select it. Now it's going to take me into that folder, and right now it only has 2 sections. We're in sheet 1, of course, but 2 sections. It has services and staff members. We haven't populated the services. If we click on that, we'll see it'll be empty. No data in column, it says, but it does recognize staff members as the title of that entire column. And when I click on it, it populates it. Now we're going to click next, and I need to give this a name, and I'm just going to call it what it is. It's staff members, and I'm going to kind of put from which folder it came, or which spreadsheet it came from. It came from the list spreadsheet. And down here we're going to say save and populate question. Okay, let's see what happened. And it did. It went to staff member and it populated all the staff members here. It's good to have a list like this, because if you have several forms that have the same data in a list, it's good just to have one place to change everything, and we change everything back here in this list template, rather than having to go to every single form and updating the staff members list if it changes. If somehow you made a mistake, you can just click edit here and it'll allow you to choose it all over again. Okay, or you could just delete it. We won't do that. And as we click here, you can see, actually we can just simply go from new values list if we wanted to change it. But the next thing we want to look at here is the auto repopulate questions. And every time the form submits, every time somebody submits a form, we want it to repopulate the list questions. And every hour, we want it to repopulate the list questions. To see how this works, I go in here. I want to add a staff member. I want to do orange staff. That's good there. I'm going to go back into the form here. Orange staff did not automatically appear. And it won't appear until we actually either submit a form or we wait till the hour is up. If it's, say, 12:30, we want it to just automatically do it. It won't until it becomes 1 o'clock, unless you submit a form or you go into Form Ranger and you refresh the question. So that's one of the weaknesses of this thing, is that if you want it to repopulate instantaneously, you're either going to have to go in and refresh it, or you're going to have to submit a form entry and then it will populate it afterwards, or you go into Form Ranger here and hit refresh questions. Now that I hit refresh, you can see orange staff popped up and it's ready to go. Okay, and that's pretty much about it. So we can close out of Form Ranger. One thing I guess we could add another question. What if somebody's a new staff member name, but we want to know their name? We don't want to just say new staff member. What if we hired 3 new staff? Which one is it? So we're actually going to just make a question, new staff name. Well, it's called new staff member name. And we're just going to make that a short answer. Okay, now we're not going to make it required, because if you've got a staff member picked, there's no reason to write in a new staff member name, so we're not going to make that required. However, we will put in a description, and in that description we'll say only fill in if new staff member is selected above. Quotation marks. Now that we fill out this form, one more thing we want to do is create a response sheet. We normally need to do this after every single form we make, because normally we want the responses captured. And here's how we do it. We have questions and we have responses here at the top. I'm going to hit responses, and it's automatically checked to accepting responses. And right here in this little green box, we just click on that, and it'll ask us if it wants to create a new spreadsheet or send them to an existing spreadsheet. We're going to say create. It creates a spreadsheet for us, and every time a form submit goes, or every time a form is filled out and they hit the submit button, it'll fill it out each row. Okay, now that we have the assessment form completed, what we want to do is look and see what it looks like after we populate it. So let's try fill it out here through the preview button, this little I, and we're just going to say for last name, and it's telling me here at the bottom, format, last name, first name, middle initial, which I'm just going to put a comma now. Now that I put the comma, it disappears. First name, and we'll give them a middle initial of T. and the date of birth. Veteran, say they have a out-of-state ID. We'll say he has a psych issue. Let's say bipolar. And this is client reported, by the way. This isn't an actual assessment where a case manager is doing a clinical assessment and making a diagnosis. That's not the place of a case manager for the homeless, unless you are a certified psychiatric doctor. But the client said he was diagnosed with bipolar, and so that's why we put down bipolar. We never make that kind of distinction on our own. Anyhow, the date of the assessment, we'll just make up a date, so 8/08, 2016, and we'll put green staff, and we're going to submit. Oh, okay, now, see, it didn't let me submit because I didn't put the time in. I forgot I'd added a time, but that's okay. And now we submit. Here we are in our assessment responses that received our input. I put in a few other names from the form. I just named them one client, 2 client, this is their last name, 3 client, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is Google's automatic timestamp. We put our own in, but nevertheless Google also keeps a separate track of the time. And the date of birth is right here, veteran status. Everything we inputted is here, date and time. Now here on the veteran status, like suppose we need to find out who our veterans are, all you need to do is just go here and just sort it from A to Z, and there you go. We have 4 veterans. This is how you can process information in your assessment and find out what your needs are. In our next video, we will talk about making a case note form, and that will be part 2 of this case management system.